I think, Jugal, this will be a huge setback for the Navy because so far the accidents that were happening, the Navy was saying that these vessels are old and need to be replaced. The Navy needs new ammunition, and now there's a ship that's yet to be commissioned. It's something that the Navy was probably waiting for, and another accident that's taken place on board that ship.
Absolutely, Simi. In fact, this was, according to what I understand, the state-of-the-art design. It was also a ship which was supposed to be a next-generation ship as far as the history of destroyers are concerned. Destroyers, remember, are the second biggest class of ships after aircraft carriers. So it is, in fact, a very, very big ship. It's a very potent ship. It was a very important ship which was coming in for the Navy, fitted with, as you rightly pointed out, brand new systems. Till now, the discourse, of course, was that these are old platforms and, we are having to stretch them. But what explains the malfunctioning of this type, which has taken the life of a very, very senior officer, a specialized officer who was out there only to ensure that the ship was performing as per the parameters that the Navy wanted it to. This is an extremely, extremely serious incident, and the Navy will have to, along with the Mazgon dock, because as I just explained, it was between the Navy and the Mazgon dock. It is not entirely, as of now, handed over to the Indian Navy. The trials were still going on. So the Indian Navy and the Mazgon dock will have to jointly investigate as to just what has caused. Is it an error in terms of a human error? Is it an error in terms of poor workmanship? Is it an error coming out of poor valves? Just where was the quality check not done? Just why did this incident take place? So it's a very, very serious incident, and one is hoping that the Navy and the Mazgon docks can come up with answers explaining just why this officer had to pay with his life on this. All
right, Jugal, stay on with us. Jugal is getting us the latest in this developing story, putting in perspective how important was this ship for the Navy. This was going to be a new acquisition. It was yet to be commissioned into the services. We're being joined by Major General Ashok Mehta. Thanks so much for speaking to Headlines today, Major General Mehta. Your first reaction, another naval mishap. There have been close to 12 naval mishaps in the last 1 year, and another naval officer now losing his life.
Well, all I can say is, as Shakespeare did, beware the Ides of March, because I don't think in the history of the Indian Armed Forces has there been such a recurring series of accidents and incidents as have happened now, unfortunately, tragically, in the Indian Navy. And it is absolutely high time that these investigations that I heard you talk about, or your colleague, that there is need now to really go down into, as they say, into the under pits and do these inquiries, because no longer can the Indian Navy or indeed the armed forces continue to suffer these tragic losses, whether they are due to human error or due to malfunctioning or due to product deficiency. And I think it is time also that the Defense Minister, who has issued a 27-page self-congratulatory document, he should personally now take interest in these events.
Absolutely. Major General Ashok Mehta, please stay with us. We're also being joined by our strategic expert, Uday Bhaskar. Uday Bhaskar, your reaction, yet another naval officer loses his life in an accident, again involving a naval ship.
Well, extreme sadness, Simi, because if one more naval officer has died in this manner when a ship is being constructed, coming in the wake of the INS Sindhuratna, where again the Navy had lost 2 officers, it is a moment of extreme sadness and anguish for the Navy, for the family, for friends, and the entire, I would say, community. At this stage, all I would say is that this is a ship which is under construction at Mazgon docks, and I'm sure that the investigations would give us a slightly better idea as to why and how this happened. And there are many reasons. A warship, especially in the last stages of completion, before the shipyard hands it over to the Navy, goes through a series of procedures, checks, and various other equipment procedures. Now, absent an investigation, I think we have to at this point, I would say neither speculation nor conjecture would be very useful, except I think to make the observation that for India, the Kolkata class is a very important platform. And when we are able to arrive at some informed assessment about the degree of the damage, I think there would be a slightly better idea about what impact this would have on this particular platform and as far as the current program of the Kolkata class is concerned, because all these ships are being built to a very tight timeline. And my own sense is that the Mazagon docks and those Indian naval personnel, particularly those in the warship overseeing team, would be able to get on top of this challenge. And for the Navy, for Mazagon docks, I'm sure that the necessary investigation would lead to a certain degree of corrective being applied. My plea, if I may, Simi, that at this stage, I don't think we should enter into trying to identify immediately either the cause or to apportion blame, because this is a very emotionally charged time for the Navy. We have had the INS Sindhuratna. We know that the Naval Chief, Admiral Joshi, had decided to step down. So under the circumstances, I think both speculation, conjecture, and trying to fix quote-unquote blame, whatever be the nature of the constituency, including the political dimension, would be most, I would say, imprudent at this point in time.
All right. Uday Bhaskar, even as you're saying that we shouldn't jump to conclusions and shouldn't point fingers at this stage, it is extremely important for the Navy to fix accountability, because you cannot have so many officers losing their lives because of cases of either human error or technical glitches that are happening with such high frequency.
You know, Simi, on this, for the Navy again to say that the Navy should fix responsibility would not be a valid conclusion, because this particular ship is currently under construction. It has not been commissioned. So to that extent, it has not yet been handed over formally to the Indian Navy. But at the same time, the Indian Navy is a stakeholder in shipbuilding, which is why we had a naval officer on board. So I think that's why I'm repeating this question of fixing responsibility in the first 10 minutes of knowing about an accident would lead us down paths, I think, that are at this stage not, I would suggest, the best of, shall we say, tracking to be done. When, as I said, both institutionally for the Navy and for the country, I mean, no country wants to have this kind of a situation where I think whether it is an explosion or an accident that leads to loss of life and delays in major construction, loss of capacity, whether we talk about the submarine or the ship, these need to be, I think we need to reflect over this. And this very hasty kind of both finger pointing and saying that one institution or one individual is responsible for this, I personally would submit is not appropriate at this point.
Well, as you're saying, finger pointing is not appropriate at this point. But Uday Bhaskar, what do you think is the reason behind such high frequency of accidents taking place?
At this point, I can only say that it's a very bad, sequence, very, very negative for the Navy. That going back to INS Sindhurakshak, which happened in August of last year, to the INS Sindhuratna, and now this. So whenever you lose life, it is cause for anguish. And yes, the Navy has to do its own review and apply the necessary policy correctives. But each of them, Simi, are, I would say, standalone. The INS Sindhurakshak was a huge tragedy. Nobody denies it. It is an unprecedented accident. Then, of course, we had the INS Sindhuratna, where we now have a little more information to say that the cable may have been the cause of whatever happened. And now today what has happened on a ship under construction, again I submit that the Navy is not at this stage directly involved because the ship has not been commissioned. But at the same time, we must get to the bottom of this, investigate.
Absolutely.
These are about procedures. They are, again, as always, you can have a combination of material failure, human error, procedural error, some security lapse.
Right.
I'm sure the investigation will give us a better picture. But at this stage, again, I think we should avoid both emotive blame kind of
All All right, Uday Bhaskar, thanks so much for sharing your views with the headlines today. Uday Bhaskar, they're saying that it's too early to point fingers and it's an emotive issue considering the fact that barely 2 weeks ago, 2 other naval officers also lost their lives on the accident that took place on board the INS Sindhuratna. We're being joined by Major General retired G.D. Bakshi on the phone line. Thanks so much for speaking to Headlines today, Major General G.D. Bakshi. Your first reaction, another naval officer we believe has lost his life today.
I mean, it is extremely tragic and one feels, saddened by this spate of accidents that unfortunately our youngest service has had to endure. I quite am a bit overwhelmed. But the fact of the matter is that, this is something which is different from the previous category of accidents. There have been a whole series of accidents, but I must hasten to add that apart from the 2 that took place on the submarine, all the others could be classed as minor, and when you operate a force like this, you do have occasional, things going awry now and then. Of course, you get to the bottom of it and you try and go for zero defect. But when these arise from bureaucratic callousness, a failure to provide critical consumables, like batteries, like happened suspectedly on the Sindhu Ghosh and the Sindhuratna. I mean, there is absolutely no excuse for that kind of a thing. And while the naval